Okay, I believe we're going to begin. And if anyone who hasn't been able to join us or who joined in late, we are recording this. So just look out for the email afterwards and you'll be able to watch the recording. So good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Katie and I'll be your host. Today's customer webinar will be featuring Portakabin, who is based in the UK. They're going to be sharing their transformation journey, challenges they faced, goals and advice they've learned and gained along the way. We are very excited to have them join us today, so let's get started. So today's webinar will be moderated by one of our client partners here at Shibumi, our client partner over in the EMEA region, Nathan Pryor, who will introduce our guests.
Thanks, Katie, and thanks everybody for joining. Myself and the Shibumi team have been lucky enough to be working with Portakabin the last 12 months or so. Portakabin are an exciting organisation with a clear and ambitious strategy, which they're delivering over the coming years. And the team here at Shibumi are really excited to be supporting them through the use of our technology. Really excited to hear what Harry and James have to say about the journey that they've been on. If there are any questions during the session, please feel free to direct them to me and I will field them at the appropriate time, or just use the Q&A and we'll pick them up as we go along. So thanks all for joining, and over to the team at Portakabin.
Thanks, Nathan, and thanks everyone for attending and joining our webinar today to understand a bit about our transformation journey here at Portakabin. So I suppose before we get started, I'd like to introduce the full agenda and what we're keen to talk about to start off with. So first, my colleague James Clarke will introduce our business to you all. He'll also run through our strategic ambitions here at Portakabin, so providing some context around what our aims are from a strategic perspective. I'll also talk a bit about our digitalization aims and what we aspire to gain from a strategic portfolio management system like Shibumi, and the current partnership that we currently have as well, which has been absolutely fantastic. So we'll share some more details around that. And finally, James will also run through some of the challenges that we've overcome as an organisation, along with us both finishing up on the lessons learned that we've gained within the process as well. So I will now pass you over to James, who will introduce you to our company, Portakabin.
Afternoon, everybody, or good morning. I'm James Clarke, Head of Strategy Delivery here at Portakabin. It's lovely to be here to talk you through what we're doing at the moment alongside our partner Shibumi. So Portakabin as a company are a world super brand with products that have led the modular market for in excess of 60 years or so now. The brand and the heritage of the company are synonymous with the modular building industry here in Europe, certainly. And Portakabin really pride themselves on as a company working with the communities in which it supports. And this is why we have over 100 sites here within Western Europe. So customers, employees, communities are central to everything we do as a business. And we work locally and are integral within those communities in which we operate. The manufacturing, the hire and the selling of all the buildings is managed by ourselves here at Portakabin and controlled in-house, and all the products in the fleet built have been within our own manufacturing facilities. That's within the UK, France, and within Germany. This has allowed us really to grow organically with the confidence around the consistency and quality of the products that we hire and sell to our customers. And it's allowed customers to gain confidence in us because of that consistency of the products and services that we give them. In terms of where we are, I mentioned that we've got 101 sites. You can see here as the orientation of those sites across Western Europe. The largest locations in terms of numbers of sites are in England and Wales, as you can see, we're 57, and the smaller countries have a smaller number of sites. So Ireland, Scotland, and Belgium, Luxembourg being one business together, have 4 sites each. But this has been a spread really with the company being established in 1961 and then spreading the operations, opening up in the 1980s within the Netherlands, also within France soon after that, and then throughout the 90s in Belgium, later in Germany, and then moving into Ireland and getting a more predominant position within Ireland, particularly during the noughties. As I mentioned, 1961, Donald Shepherd founded with the first Portakabin building here in York, and we still manufacture the vast majority of the buildings actually that we do have within our fleet here in York. And I think for those of you who don't know York, York is a beautiful city actually in the north of England. It's very, very popular with tourists, one of the most visited places here within the UK. It's famous really for its Minster, which is an amazing structure, second largest Gothic cathedral in Europe behind Seville. It's got the largest railway museum in the world. It's obviously famous for chocolate, of course, with the sort of lovely smell of chocolate permeating through the city. And of course, it's very famous for its modular building company, Portakabin. Our strategic aims. So the company as a whole, our aim is to grow and grow relatively quickly. There is consideration with regards to public and private spend across Europe that will increase, and the demand on modular buildings will increase over the next 5 to 10 years, which gives us huge opportunities for growth in markets where we have smaller percentage of the market, and even where we do have larger percentages, particularly here in the UK, where we're the largest company in most sectors, it still gives us further opportunity to grow. So particularly in sectors like the education sector, the health sector, but working very closely within the transport logistics sector, within manufacturing and other key sectors where companies have multiple sites. They want to have consistency and quality of buildings for their employees wherever they may be, and we're fundamentally a key part of that. The modular market is really very competitive across Europe with multiple smaller players, but some larger players as well. We're one of only 2 pan-European large players, and we obviously want to make sure that we are increasing the percentage of the markets that we have wherever we might operate. In terms of the right-hand box at the top, in terms of full solution, historically, modular building companies have provided the building, the shell of what the customer operates within. What we do, and we've really led the market on this, is providing a full solution for the customer. So it's making sure their climate control needs, their security needs, whatever they have outside the building, anything that's required in that to make it an office complex, to make it a hospital with every type of equipment you could possibly imagine is in place. So we have that and we do that, and many of our customers rely on us with regards to that. With regards to innovation and sustainability, Portakabin as a product is a sustainable product. So we would expect buildings to last potentially between 30 and 50 years in terms of their life cycle. We use them within hire, and we also sell those buildings. And so the advantage for customers is actually that they might be getting a building that's already been on other sites. So it inherently is a sustainable solution for them. But it's also what you can put within that building. So a fairly standard type solution for a customer might be solar panels. It might be a certain type of wrap that can fit into the environment around itself. But there's current projects which work at making sure buildings are off-grid as well. So heat pumps, smart lighting, water recycling systems. So buildings are self-sustaining in their own right. I'm going to say this, but it's true. Portakabin is actually a brilliant place to work. It really is. With the average employee staying well in excess of 10 years at Portakabin, we've got a lot of people who've got a lot of long service here within Portakabin as a business, and doesn't matter if you go to the most southerly or the most northerly, and I've been to those 2 different offices, there's good people within Portakabin who make sure they look after one another. So it's continuing to do that to make sure we are moving forward as a company of evolving, but making sure we keep that positive, really good culture that we have. In terms of investment in infrastructure and technology, we have historically invested a lot of money in infrastructure in the way that we work and the way that we operate and where we operate. Technology tends to go through phases. So we might recognize the need within certain phases of strategic deliverables to invest in new technologies or different types of technologies. And Portakabin's gone through that, and we're just moving into another phase there. One part of that obviously being the great work that we've done over the last 12 months or so, as Nathan mentioned, with Shibumi to set up the strategic portfolio management system to support our 5 to 10 year strategic plan that we have to grow the business. Thank you.
Cheers, James. So I think just providing a bit of context really in terms of what I would like to talk about today. I think we've got a plan in place, and I think we needed a tool to support it, and that's definitely something that James and I worked quite hard on. I think I probably around a year or so ago to kind of envisage what that tool would be. The main points that came from that investigation really was around, well, first key point was around we wanted a tool that was a single source of truth. And essentially what we mean by that is that it's essentially a tool that we can access and a team can access, that everyone uses, and it doesn't, if it's not in the tool, it doesn't exist. And that's kind of where, that's essentially what we say within our team is we need a tool that everyone uses, that we look at and we can see the milestones, we can see the activities, we can see the full strategic journey that a work stream goes through. And that is essentially what we were really hoping for within a tool. Ensuring that the tool would be a single source of truth, not only for the strategy delivery team, but I think for the leadership team as well. So from an enterprise function, but also from our board as well, to go into the tool and say, oh, I know exactly where people are when it comes to a strategy. Secondly, I think the tool must remove any barriers of success for any team really, but also for a work stream when using the tool. It can't be seen as an admin burden, and this is really important. I think when we're bringing in a tool, it can't be seen as something that's gonna take too much time for people. It has to be something that they go into and is actually quite easy and quite user friendly. I think all of those things are really important. So we have to remove that barrier for success when people are using it. Thirdly, the tool must match what we aim to deliver as a business. So it has to be suitable for all strategic programs within our strategy, whilst also ensuring that the user experience of the tool is of the highest standard. So really, we have an aim to deliver something, and the tool has to support us. That's really what it comes down to. The user experience is probably the most important thing. I think from my own personal experience of implementing tools, and just from what we aim to achieve, the user experience of a tool is the most important thing, and that's something that we really wanted to make sure that Shibumi could offer us, was a smooth user experience overall generally. And finally, the system has to be flexible to our business needs. So we are very complex as a business. We have different requirements. There are different work streams that have different requirements. So it's really important that a tool is there and can be flexible to those requirements that we have. So everything that I mentioned within that list is everything that Shibumi offers us. And that's been something that's been great for us, is that not only that, but all of those things within that are things that Shibumi have been great at. Another key thing as well is that we have a really good, solid working relationship with Shibumi. And this is integral, I think, for anyone listening who's at an early stage of implementation. Please involve yourself with Shibumi or with another team at a really early on stage of your development process. The reason being is that it's really important for you to get to know the team, for you to understand the tool, what it offers, and what it can bring to your business, so you're then able to implement that change. It's really important that you make that early interaction at the start of the process. We're also working with a tool that has an abundance of features, and this is really exciting for us, which links very closely to why we wanted the tool to be flexible and to be flexible to our business needs. And it's also important to know for us as a system that the system is constantly evolving and changing. So there's new features and improvements within the system that are coming out on a regular basis, which is great and really exciting, I think, for our dev team as well. So this has been great for us, and it's been great to understand how those features could work when it comes to strategic implementation of projects as well. So to provide you an overall snapshot, it's been great, I think, in terms of how we've been able to implement it. It's not to say that we haven't had challenges, because I think it's fair to say that we have, but I think in terms of where we are and in terms of where we've got to, the journey has been fantastic, and we've understood the importance we understood the importance, James and I, of having a digital tool very early on in this process. And the key things that I listed out prior to this slide around flexibility, around user experience, around what we wanted the tool to achieve, these are all things that the tool has been able to provide us, but it's also pretty basic in terms of what is actually required when it comes to managing strategic projects. So I think, yeah, as an overall snapshot, it's been pretty good. So that's kind of where I wanted to leave you on that one. So I'll pass you over to James.
Thanks, Harry. I guess in terms of overcoming challenges, anyone who's delivered strategic programs before will know that there are certain things you've got to try to get right. You want to get right the journey that people are taking within the work stream or program that they're running. So the plan has to be really, really clear in terms of what you're doing, clear objectives, what they're doing, the resource allocation, where that might need to be, the risks and issues and how you're going to manage those and mitigate them, and the benefits and the realization. So some of the key things that Harry and I thought in terms of the challenges we needed to really focus on overcoming was resource allocation. And really with that, what we found historically is that some of the same people are needed in different programs or work streams at the same time. And so therefore there's a stretch on that particular type of resource. We might have the resource available across the company, but actually we don't have the right skill set with that particular subject matter expert potentially. So if you use the program and you use the particular module within Shibumi for resource allocation, you've got the potential there to see where your pinch points are and even anticipate where those pinch points are in the future, which is obviously a key thing in terms of influencing potential long-term decision making. And that's something that we are still working on really now to make perfect. It's not something that we have that is perfect for us at this moment in time, but certainly Harry alongside the Shibumi team have made huge steps to allow us that understanding of resource, which is really, really, really important. They're doing a great job there. Understanding your risks, the consistency of risks across different parts of work streams and programs is really important as well, because you do have the same risks often across different work streams that may be working fairly independently of one another, but have interdependencies. So we at an enterprise level can see what those are, understand what they are, work with the risk management team, and obviously make sure that the same mitigation plans are in place to overcome those and make sure that they're minimized as best we possibly can. In terms of performance monitoring, it's always a major challenge, particularly those that aren't necessarily financial and aren't data-driven in terms of numbers. What the Shibumi system does is it allows you to monitor progress against key milestones. So it's key activities, talking through the journey that you're on, that where you're trying to get to, that's been really important for us. So we do have the financial metrics behind it. But Shibumi is used very, very, very importantly for us to make sure we're following through each of the different elements and pillars that we've got within the strategy to say how you're doing it, when you're doing it, and when you're expected to do it. And if you've got that and it's really, really clear for them, then you've got the transparency in holding people accountable for what they're doing and when they're doing it. Strategic goal alignment, again, with the company working across multiple countries that we do and multiple languages, that does sometimes bring challenges with regards to the alignment of where we want to move strategically. This system allows us to bring those together and see the similarities for a French business to our German business, to our Irish business, to our business in Scotland, for instance. So you bring those together and make sure they're brought together from an enterprise perspective to deliver the benefits that you want to deliver. And that potentially means early realization of benefits as well if you use it correctly. And in terms of decision making, if you don't have a tool of any form whatsoever to follow your strategic deliverables, then you are probably going to be unsuccessful in what you're trying to do. That's ultimately what will probably happen. And certainly from my own experience of previous strategies and deliveries, with nothing in place and no way to measure the performance and success that you're going through, it does make it extremely difficult to say whether you are successful or not successful and pinpoint where that barrier to success might be as well. So that's really, really key in everything we're doing. And Shibumi as a tool helps us to do that. So it helps us to get the executives to be able to make decisions based on real-time data of what's being delivered. Thanks, Harry.
So I think I want to touch on this first point, just to kind of cover lessons learned and some of the things that we've learned as a team together. The key thing for me is involvement with a strategy delivery function or an EPMO function at the very, very start of your implementation journey. And the reason why I mention this is because this is the team that will be leading this tool and will be continuing to leading the tool for 4, 5, 6, 7 years on. So they really need to be involved in that early implementation process. Not only that, they are key in then speaking to the rest of the business to see how we can then evolve that tool for even further, or even to make sure that we include the right things at the right time. So yeah, so I just wanted to cover that initial point, which is the involvement of the strategy delivery function, because it is very important. That if I was to provide any advice to anyone on this call, I would very much say that was a really important part.
Yeah, absolutely, Harry. I thoroughly agree there. I think also what you need within any strategic deliverable is all levels within your organization to buy in. Now, if you work for a company where 100% of the people in your business buy into your strategy and they're there on day one, then please tell me who you are and what company you work for, because that's an amazing situation to be in. We face challenges on a daily basis across different countries that we operate in terms of buy-in to what we're doing, the way we're doing it, the way we're trying to govern it, which does create difficulties to seeing success. We see relatively good buy-in actually, and certainly we've seen lots and lots of good, strong deliverables during 2023. We're planning now how we are implementing the next year of the 5-year strategy and exactly what that might mean to us. But if you don't get buy-in, then you don't deliver what you want to deliver. So that's really, really key. And having a system to support what you do, which is relevant. And Harry mentioned the correct terminology earlier on. You don't want it to be an admin burden. So you must make it a system that works for your programs and work streams, as well as working for the senior execs that this is going to be shown to, and that those work streams are going to be held accountable to. So it has to work for both. There has to be a good balance. And that moves me on really to the governance side. We've worked within programs here within Portakabin that are governed, like you say, heavily, and some that are governed more lightly. It has to be the right approach for the right program and the right work stream at the right time. No one type of governance suits every type of deliverable, so it does need to be different for the scenario you find yourself in, and that could be a judgment based on the maturity of those individuals working within that program, or it could be the situation they find themselves in, or it could be because you've had funding removed, so you need to step back from the governance to make sure that they can hold back and do what they need to do in the circumstances they find themselves in. But yeah, governance and the right level of governance is critical, I would say, for strategic success. And finding that balance is really important within your company. But Shibumi as a tool can help you find that balance as well, because we took that tool on in a very basic form a year ago, and it wasn't exactly suitable for what we needed at that point. But it's evolved over the last 12 months. And through Harry's work, particularly with Nathan and the team, they've created something now which is looking like it's a really, really great thing to support us through the next 5 to 10 years of this long-term strategy that we've got.
Thanks, Harry. Thanks, James. So it looks like nobody's used the Q&A, but I had a couple of questions come through, and Katie, thanks for sending the couple that you got come through as well. A couple of these I think have already been answered, so I think they came in before some of the talking points that you've raised. So thank you very much for talking us through that. I am going to pick up the questions because I think we do have a few minutes. So let's go with, okay, so I think you mentioned this. So did you encounter any internal resistance to the change in approach? So presumably centralizing how that you manage the delivery of your corporate strategy. And if so, how did you overcome it?
So I think it's a really, really interesting question, and it will depend on the situation you find yourself in. We have some cultural differences depending on where you are within Europe, and we have different levels of maturity in terms of the understanding of how strategy is delivered, and our part and their part within that as well. So I think communication is absolutely key with regards to how you overcome that. Communicating with them, trying to help them understand the positives in what you're trying to do, why you have this strategic portfolio management tool, why it's really important that it is used, and again, I'm going to stress, not as an administrative burden, but as a basic tool to show the journey and show your workings. How are you getting to your endpoint? If you have projects that you're dealing with customers, you wouldn't leave them not telling them how you're going to deliver the buildings. For instance, from our perspective, you tell them what you're going to do, when you're going to do it, when it's going to be delivered, what type of work's going to go on site, when it will be completed, and when you're going to hand that building over. So we expect the same principles ourselves internally to talk about what your deliverable is, and then therefore what the milestones would be to get to that deliverable and the activity within each milestone that you've got. So it's trying to make sure that you're communicating and talking through why that is really important. but it is a constant challenge.
Yeah, thanks, James. Another question, and I think you've alluded to this as well, but you did mention that there have been challenges, and Harry, you've already touched on some of the kind of lessons learned as well. But the question is, are there any obvious lessons that you have learned since you started your journey? Harry, I know you've got quite a strong opinion on, on that, but if there was one takeaway, if there was one thing that you could kind of go back and do differently, what do you think that might be?
Yeah, very good question. I think obviously the key one that I mentioned around, which was involvement of a strategy delivery team or an EPMO function early on. I think it's probably going around, I suppose, and listening to the business. So I think it's listening to what people want, which I don't. If I was to change it, I would definitely change the approach that was taken in the kind of early implementation phase, because I think the people that are using it are key in how it should look and how it should work, and it has to be right for us as a business. As I mentioned, obviously we are very complex with different needs and requirements, so we have to go through a journey, I think, with the people that are using it. So yeah, I would definitely involve the business and involve the work streams a lot more when it comes to implementing a tool like Shibumi, because they're using it day to day. So they have to really be involved in that process, definitely.
Yeah, and obviously I've spent lots of time with you up in York, and we've met, the various different business unit leads to get their feedback. I think that feeds quite nicely into the next question. So I think you've subsequently answered this as well, James, in some of your closing comments there, but you mentioned some of the modules that we were using, so presumably the resource risk stuff that you were showing on your slide. Did you take an iterative approach to rolling out these capabilities, or did you just launch it all? I think, James, you already said you started off with something that was relatively straightforward. So you started by starting. So I'm going to adjust the question. How do you feel about that approach that you've taken by starting and then evolve and grow over time? Or is there any part of you that thinks that you just launched this out to the business from the outset?
I think Harry knows the detail behind this because he's been much closer to to you, obviously, and the way you've approached it. I think it would depend on the maturity of the organization you're working with as to how you do that. From our perspective, going from the tools we had before we started to use Shibumi, it was probably quite important that we didn't go all guns blazing with everything first of all. Do you want to talk about the journey you've gone through, Harry, over the last year or so?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we were very selective in terms of what we changed within the system. And I think we went through a process very similar to how when we're implementing tools within our organization anyway, we have to also tell people the benefits. So we have to be very clear about, right, okay, here's a new addition to Shibumi. What are the key benefits to that? How do we then communicate those benefits to people? Do we get them in a room and teach them how to use it? Or do we send out a digital learning tool to teach them all the complexities of it? So I think we made sure that we went through a process of build something, roll it out, and then do it in a very kind of step-by-step process rather than kind of develop the whole thing and then launch it to everyone. Because I think the worry is that people will look at that and go, I've got absolutely no idea how to use this. I'm not touching it. So I think we have to almost handhold, but I think do it in a way that's acceptable and appropriate. So it really means that they understand the benefits, they understand why we've done it, they understand the whole reasons as to why Shibumi is here in the first place. So I would really recommend that it's from what James mentioned previously around, it's very different for different businesses, of course. But I think if you wanted to understand, I suppose you could get feedback around how things have gone. You could understand kind of by doing a step-by-step process. So yeah, it's very different to any business, but I think it's worked for us by doing that step-by-step process.
Yeah, and my penny's worth, obviously working with lots of organizations like Portakabin, I do think the idea of start by starting and then evolve based on insight and the reality rather than aspiring to just get everything done in one go. That's the kind of approach that I see being really successful. So conscious of time, there is another question that I did like the look of, so I'm going to ask this. Who at a senior level sponsored the need for a defined approach and this centralized approach to tracking the work that you're doing? So I think somebody wants to know who paid the bill.
So in terms of that, you have to have sponsorship or support from your senior execs. So the board have to be supporting what you're doing. If they support what you're doing, you're much more likely to be successful. If they don't buy into it, or they don't believe the information, or they don't go in for it, then it is a real challenge to deliver what you want to deliver as a business. So you need that support from the senior execs. So when we were working firstly with Shibumi, it was sort of introductions through a consultant. And the consultants were working very closely with ourselves in strategic delivery, but also with the board of directors, the CEO, the CFO, the COO, and they knew of what was coming in terms of the strategy that was being developed, being put into a tool that would help support the understanding and benefit realization of that. And by having a tool, as I reiterated earlier, if you don't have a tool, you have nothing to follow what you're doing. There's different factions and different people across the business delivering things, and you can't bring them together. But if you have that ability to bring things together, you give yourself the potential of early benefit realization, or earlier benefit realization, and actually transparent benefit realization. And that was what's really, really key with what we are trying to do with ours, is make sure we can see and understand the benefits that the different work streams are working on, and how they come together to support the overall strategic company aim long term. So top level support is key, Nathan.
Yeah, I knew that. All right, fantastic. Okay, well, I think that's probably, with the time that we have, that's probably all the questions that we'll get round to answering now. I just want to thank you for your time and for putting this together. Obviously, I know the journey that you've been on, and it's been a pleasure to be on that journey, and we look forward to supporting you for years to come. But it's great to be able to kind of showcase the story for people that are maybe considering doing something similar or wondering the best way to approach it. If anybody wants to communicate with myself or Harry or James, whether they like it or not, because their LinkedIn details are up on the page, then feel free to reach out to us. And we'll be happy to kind of communicate with you if you want to do that kind of away from this forum. But James, Harry, thank you so much for putting this together. Thanks for your time. Thanks to all the attendees for joining and everybody that put this together, and catch you all soon.
Thanks, Nathan.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys. Cheerio.
Bye-bye.